Hello students. Now in this particular video, we are going to revise lesson 2 of history, that is Socialism in Europe and the Russian Revolution. Now we are going to revise this chapter through a mind map of the lesson. Now let's start this, okay? First we will focus on the age of social change. Now, as you can see that the coming of socialism in Europe after the French Revolution, it was basically different type of ideologies and people with different type of thinking process uh, did come up in the society. The French Revolution paved the way for a major societal change. And in that, we saw that there were people who were known as liberals, radicals, and conservatives. Now, if you look at the liberals, they wanted a nation which tolerated all religions. They opposed the uncontrolled power of dynastic rulers. So, when we look at Russia itself and some of the other European states, they were multi-religious. There were religions like Greek Orthodox Church, the Catholics within the Catholics, Roman Orthodox Church. Then there were even Muslims. There were Buddhists. Okay, and there were Protestants within Catholics and Protestants. They are two kind of sects among Christianity. So the liberals wanted that there should be, all religions should be tolerated and equal status should be given, and they opposed the uncontrolled power of the dynastic rulers, means monarchical form of government. They did not want absolute powers to be in the hands of people belonging to one particular dynasty or family. While the radicals, they wanted a nation in which government was based on majority of a country's population. Okay, now see, both the liberals as well as the radicals, they wanted a parliamentary form of government. They wanted elected representatives to rule, but then they were there was a difference between them. The difference was liberals, they did not want universal adult franchise, while the radicals wanted that. They wanted women also to get the voting rights. Okay, so few things were common between them. And as liberals, they were different from Democrats, because few things were common, like elected representative should rule the country, but they did not. Liberals wanted only property, men to have voting rights. Okay, while conservatives, they were totally opposed to both radicals and liberals. What did they want? They wanted basically that the old traditional methods or dynastic rules should be there. They were open to changes, but those changes they wanted those changes to be very slow, while keeping intact the old traditional monarchical form of government. Okay, now then we see that a new concept came up, that was in the mid 19th century, that were socialists. Okay, now socialism, this idea, basically, if you look at the what is socialism, this change came after the industrial society and social change after industrial revolution. Fine. And what had happened, because industrial revolution, again, that is why we call it industrial revolution, because it brought in a major, okay, socio-economic changes within in the entire world. Now, because of industrialization, new cities came up, railways expanded, and industrial revolution occurred. As I told you, when there's a major change, okay, in the society, the economy, okay, it is all or politically, then only it is known as revolution. So that this really brought major changes. The Industrial Revolution, it brought men, women, and children to factories. Work, working hours were very long, and they were not paid properly. Okay, this was the reason why Karl Marx, who actually wrote in his book *Thus Capital*, that the control should not be in the hands of industrialists or capitalists, the people who put in money and who had industries. Actually, proper and equal sharing of the profit should be done, wherein, because the profit which comes to any industry is not only because people have invested money in that particular industry, but even the workers, they participate equally. So there should be equal distribution of the profit. Okay, so this was the basic idea and concept. And then this is how a socialist society, came into being. That was the, you can say, the impact of the Industrial Revolution, right? And the socialists, they were against private property. They wanted that the property should be common, and the government, it should be state controlled, means the government should control that, and then they should equally distribute it within all the people who are working for that particular in that country. Okay, that was the idea. Now this support for socialism, now socialism became, it was a new concept. It started getting spread to different parts of the world, and especially, as we all know, that industrialization started in England, so naturally it was Europe. And Western Europe has always been, you can say, the center of changes. So now what had happened, as you can see here, this in the European countries, in Germany actually, they started with it. They formed this basically, support for socialism started getting spread, and they formed an international body, the Second International. It was basically, they were supporting socialism. Then they set up funds to help members in the times of distress, demanded reduction of working hours and rights to, right to vote. Now here, students, as we know that in England, the Labour Party was formed. Then in Germany, another European country, that this social democratic parties were. It was basically social democratic parties were formed. They talked about socialism. They talked about, the idea which was floated by Karl Marx and Frederick Engels, that was discussed amongst the people. Okay, so this is known as socialism in Europe. This entire concept. Now let us come to Russian Revolution. Now we know that Russia. Now first we need to understand. We need to revise that what was Russia all about, and we can see that Russia was at that point of time when the revolution took place. Before that, we need to understand what was the Russian Empire. How it was in 1914, and so it was ruled by Tsar Nicholas II. He was the king of Russia. The kings in Russia, they're known as Tsars, and they were known as Tsars. And of course, the majority religion was Russian Orthodox Christianity. But then there were other, religions also, like the Protestants, and even the Catholics who followed Greek church, Greek Orthodox Church. Okay, and then we see that basically there were Buddhists also, there were Jagadhists also. And now let us see that how was the economy and society. Most of the 85% of the people, they were agriculturists, and Russia was the major exporter of grain. Fine. But gradually, industries were, found in pockets. Means they were St. Petersburg and Moscow. They only had industries. There were not much industries because, in the western part of Europe, already industrialization had taken place. So it was 40% of industrialization, 60% were into agriculture. So Russia was still an agricultural country. So Russia became the exporter of grains. Okay. Now socialism in Russia. Now we see that basically this how Russia adopted this idea of socialism, of a socialist society, and there were basically, when we look at this, there were two types of parties that were formed. One was Social Democratic Party, Workers' Party, which supported, which led the workers, and the other was Socialist Revolutionary Party, which supported the peasants. Fine, and they set up newspapers, they mobilized the workers, and they organized strikes. Okay, so they were basically, when we look at Russia and the parties which came up, of course, because there was monarchical form of government, the Tsar did not accept it, and the Tsar basically, these parties, they were not legal, so they used to work from underground, but they did mobilize, they did mobilize, they did support the people. Okay, and within them also, we can say that there was a difference between the socialist democrats, who supported the workers. They believed that the workers were the ones who should lead the Russian Revolution, who should lead, fight for socialism, and the Tsar should give away, and people should start ruling. Fine. While the peasants, the Revolutionary Party, they believed in that no, Russia was a natural socialist country, because we have already seen, and we have done that how it was an agriculture based country, and the peasants there, they pooled the land, and basically, and they used to follow the process of farming, where basically, as per the need, the meal or the commune, they used to, and as per the need of the families, they used to divide the share. So this was a very common practice, and within the workers also, there was a lot of, though they were divided, socially divided, there was a class distinction between the workers. Like the metal workers were more skilled, and there were aristocrats among the workers. But when it came to protests against the industrialists or the factory owners, then all the workers, they would get together. They would really come to help each other in the time of distress and problems. So this was a very natural way the Russians lived. So that is why, they did not accept. They did not, when they wanted the Tsar to leave. They wanted freedom. They wanted the Tsarist, rule to finish off in Russia. They did not adopt democracy. They wanted socialism. Okay. Now a turbulent time. Turbulence, we know, we have already done about the 1905 revolution. So let's see this. They, of course, they demanded a constitution. They wanted the prices of essential goods. It rose because what was the real price, because the prices were going up. The wages, the workers were not being paid properly, and that is why, and so naturally the real wages declined, because if you're not earning properly, but the prices are going up. So already we have discussed in the class that how this is called inflation, and that the real wage gets declined. So it was declining by 20%, and it was whom it was hitting. It was hitting the workers, the peasants. Fine. So here the workers actually, they got together, and they marched to the Winter Palace, which was the you can say where the Tsar, of course, it was official, it was a residence of the Tsar. They went there, they striked, and this particular site was a Sunday. They were led by Father Gapin, and when they reached there, what happened? The Tsar actually ordered his troops, his army, Cossacks, and all to attack, and therein 100 workers, they were killed, and many were also injured. So this was basically when they had gone with a petition. They would not protest. They were not violent. They wanted to talk to the Tsar. They wanted that peace. They wanted better wages. They wanted less working hours. Living conditions should be good. But then the Tsar actually, it was brutal, and this brutal repression. So many workers were killed. So this, as it was a Sunday, so in the Russian history, and it is known as Bloody Sunday. Okay. Now let us see this: the First World War in the Russian Empire. The First World War Actually, there were central powers, and they were Germany, Austria, and Turkey, and allied powers were France, Britain, and Russia. So initially, during the First World War, the people also supported the Tsar. They were very like enthusiastic. They wanted Russia to participate in the First World War, but gradually, when they saw the policies of the Tsar, who was actually taking just his advisors were Rasputin, one of his ministers, and the Queen, okay, the Tsarina Alexandria, who was of German origin. So there was a lot of people actually not they did not want war, and Russia actually was in fact. And initially, in the Eastern Front, they were many soldiers were dying, and it was a bad situation. The Russians thought that they are going to get defeated and nothing will be left with us, and so they even started, they started basically reacting to it. And the impact of the First World War was really bad, and people wanted this particular war, to come to an end. And they destroyed. There was a lot of economic distress. There was a lot of loss economically, politically. But finally, Russia was actually part of this particular. They win, because the Allied powers, they won the First World War, but Russia had to face a lot of adversities, lot of you can say economic. Um, Distress was there economically, politically, socially. Russia also had to face a lot, and they blamed for everything. They blamed the king. So this was how Russian Revolution started. The people, they fought for it. Okay, they were basically in 1917. There were two revolutions. One was the February Revolution. The other was the October Revolution. And together, in the February Revolution, people they started, after the first, this basically we saw that Lenin, who was he came back. He was the leader of the Bolsheviks, as the Workers' Democratic Party divided into two parts. And then, of course, Lenin, he came back, and he demanded for you can say the king should leave, and they should end the war. He wanted socialism to be established, and he was a very aggressive leader. And Russia, there were series of events which took place in February, and finally in October, how the Bolsheviks took over. First, there was a after February Revolution, the Tsar had to step down when everybody advised the Tsar to give up. So he had no other choice. He tried to restrain a lot, but there was no other choice. A provisional government was made, and then finally the Bolsheviks took over, and that was through the October Revolution. So basically, in 1917, the October Revolution, which is known as Russian Revolution, but there were a series of events which took place, and then finally, when Russia had to face a civil war also, and which was basically civil war means there was a war within the country only, because the socialists, the revolutionaries, you can say, who supported the peasants, and then the Bolsheviks, they became very, very demanding and dictating. While the Tsarists, they were who supported the Tsar. So there was a fight within, and even the countries who were democratic countries like USA, Japan, okay, they supported the czarists or the socialists, because they did not want the Bolsheviks or socialism to be established in Russia. So we see that there was a civil war also, but finally the Bolsheviks, they won over, and now Bolsheviks were no more. They were known as Bolsheviks, but they were known as basically Lenin renamed them as the Communist Party of Russia. And then we see that after there was a lot of changes. A socialist society was made, wherein there was central planning was there, and then it actually the central planning, centralized planning, and banks were nationalized, industries were nationalized, and it brought a lot of changes in Russia. The entire world was astonished to see this change. A country which was not very, which was a poor country, it was growing by leaps and bounds. Okay, and then of course the workers, they were given facilities to even while they were doing their work, they would go to extended schooling and universities. So these kind of facilities were given, and they were mess within the factory. They were creche for the working women. Okay, where the children could stay. So these kind of schooling system was done. They really worked on their economy, and it was Russia became a socialist country. And gradually we see that Lenin, he actually incorporated, he collaborated with all the people who wanted, the multi religious and multi ethnic people who lived in the Russian Empire, which was a vast empire. So they were all brought together, and some regions were given autonomy. So Lenin, through his diplomatic ways, and of course with this kind of assertive rule, USSR was created, and which became an example. It set an example to the in the entire world, and people started coming from different parts of the world to study about communism and socialism in Russia. Okay, so this is how globally also Russia became very, very influential, and it became a seat of, you can say, a center and a seat of learning for socialism. So though the world looked at the ways in which the everybody knew about it, that it was everything was not very good, the people were not giving that kind of freedom as they claimed. But yes, Russia did have a say in the world now. And of course, after Lenin, we should not forget about Stalin. Stalin and his collectivization program, though it was also experimental, but he also had, he also wanted, you can say, land to be pooled in. He believed that bigger lands can give better profit, and he did work towards it with the iron hands, and again centralized planning, and very, where the center had everything in their hand. Though many people, his rule was not very, persecuted means he killed many people who were, and many of them were educated, they were professionals, they were scholars. But it was very sad that under Stalin's rule, and he did rule with iron hands. But then his collectivization program is very, was very sought after. He did it, but it was critically acclaimed. Even people say that some people find it were many faults, but he, again, as I told you, he ruled with iron hands. And this is how, the Russian revolution, it took place, and this is how Russia became a communist country. Okay, I hope this it is going to help you. We had a revision of the entire chapter. So thank you, students. Thank you for watching this video. See you next time with another video. And till then, goodbye.